Let's just write algebra. So here, there is a number of things that I want to teach you today, or that I want you to take note of. The first one is that if you have x and then maybe a bracket like this equals to 0. So here there is no need to multiply the x inside. Why there is no need to multiply the x inside? Because this thing is already equals to 0. So instead of multiplying inside the x, you can just write x equals to 0 or x, and then you transpose whatever value that is here. Maybe equals to negative if the value was positive, positive if the value was negative. Then if you have, okay, let's just do an example of this one quickly. So let us say maybe you have x into x maybe plus 9 equals to 0. So here there is no need to put the bracket inside. You can just write x equals to 0 or x, you transpose the 9 equals to negative 9. And then number B, if you have something like this, maybe x into x, and let's say plus 8, but now it is equals to a number here. So now you are required to put the bracket in and make it a correct standard form. So while you must multiply, you must expand this bracket or multiply the x in. It is because this thing is equals to a number this side, not to 0. So this way you have to put it in. So here you just expand the bracket and then at the end you factorize and find the answer. Let us make an example for this one. Let us say maybe we have let's say maybe we have x and then into x minus 2 and then equals to, let's say maybe equals to negative 3. So here you are required to multiply the x inside. Why you are required to multiply the x inside? Because this is equals to a number is not equals to 0 inside. You can even make it to be a positive 3. Let us make it to be a positive 3. And then you multiply inside. So it will be x squared minus 2x and then minus 3 equals to 0. Then that will be x minus 3 and then x plus 1. So if you multiply this bracket inside, it will give you whatever power over there. So here now it will be x equals to 3 or x equals to negative 1. So I hope now you know the reason of why did we put this x inside. It's because it is equals to a number here, but we do not put the x inside if it is equals to 0 like this. And then now another thing that I want you to know is that, let us say maybe we have our number c. This thing, it also works if you have two brackets. Maybe x minus a number into x, maybe let's just use plus, maybe p equals to 0. So x minus a number, x plus a number equals to 0. So here is already equals to 0. Your job is just to equate each bracket to the 0. And then you get the answer. You can even skip this step. You can even skip this step and make it to be x equals to a or x equals to negative b. Same applies if you have x minus let's say a number, then x plus maybe another number, and then equals to a number here. Let's make our number d. So let me say you have something like this. So now it's not equals to 0, but okay, let us now choose d because it looks like more like a 0. So let us just see like this. So here you are required now to expand the brackets. Why you are required to expand the bracket? Because it is not equals to 0, but it is equals to what? To a number. So let us do some examples about these ones before we can start with them. So this one is the first example where the product of two brackets is equals to 0. So if you have something like this, there is no need to multiply as we're saying. The answer here, it will be just x. The answer here, it will be just x equals to 2 or x equals to -3. Because most of you, they already know that we will equate each bracket to 0 and then we transpose. So here now, it is equals to a number. So since it is equals to a number, we all know that we have to do what now? Multiply in what? The bracket. Why do we have to multiply the bracket in? Because it is equals to a number. So how is it going to be? It will be x squared, then plus 4x minus x, and then minus 4 minus 6 equals to 0. And then it will be x squared plus 3x and then minus 10 equals to 0. So we all know the factors of 10 that can make 3 is 5 and 2. So it will be plus 5 and then x minus 2. Then x equals to -5 or x equals to 2. And then another thing that you have to know also is that sometimes inside here you can have some like maybe fractions, but then if you know this concept, then it will be very easy for you to solve them very quickly. Then another thing that I want to clarify to you is that not all the time you'll have some like this. Sometimes maybe you can be given some other ones, maybe like this. So here is the same thing. So it will be 2x equals to 0 or x minus 3 equals to 0. We must not multiply in or expand the brackets. Why? Because it's already equals to 0. So this side will be still equals to 0, and then here x will be equals to positive 3. So be careful about everything like this, because sometimes you can be given some of the things that I didn't mention here. It will be the same thing but not mentioned here, but then most of you will just say, we did this already, so why now is it not the same? It will not be exactly the same, but if you know this, you can be able to solve many of them. Then number E, it will be where maybe you are given just an equation that is already in standard form. So if I'm talking about a standard form, I'm talking about a quadratic standard form. So this is it. Every time you try to make something like this, but it must be a correct standard form. Correct standard form means everything is equals to 0 and there are no factors for A that can go into A, B and C. So it means it's a correct standard form. So let me just make an example here. Let me say maybe we are given x squared. I'll be using the same one there. Maybe let us use 7 now. Plus 7x, and then let us do it like this, plus x, and then minus 12, and then equals to 0. But now I will just put a common factor, then I will make this one to be 24. I'll make this one to be 24. So most of you here just put it in the quadratic formula and then you get the answer. And most of the time the memorandums, they normally say you must put factors. They give a mark for factors, not for a standard form. So if you have factors, avoid using the quadratic formula. Why? You have to avoid to use the quadratic formula because you have what? Factors. So like this one, and if you can check very well, you can just divide here by 2 everywhere, because 2 is a factor. And then what will be left with, it will be x squared plus x, and then minus 12 equals to 0. So the factors of negative 12 that can make positive 1, it will be x plus 4, and then x minus 3, then equals to 0. But then now the memos, they are looking for factors, because this equation has factors. So if you have factors, you avoid using what? The quadratic formula. And then here they will have your answers. Now it is what I was discussing earlier there on top, right here. Now we have a product of two brackets equals to 0. So here also it will be what? It will be, okay, let me just erase this quickly. So it will be what? It will be x equals to negative 4 or x equals to 3. And then you are done. Then after this, if they say let me say maybe they give you an equation without factors, maybe 2x squared minus, let us just use this one, where they will be saying maybe 3x squared plus x, and then equals to 1. So you can clearly see that this equation does not look like this equation. What do we call this equation again? It is called a standard form. Standard form. So it does not look like the standard form there. So what we have to do, we have to transpose this one to this side so that it can look like a standard form. So in equations like this, you do not have what? The factors. So they will say maybe a round of 2, maybe you can say 2 decimal places. So if they tell you round off to a number of decimal places, 2 decimal places, 3 decimal places, so what they will be meaning, that one is just a clear indication for you to use the quadratic formula. So they want to see you substituting into the quadratic formula, but not yet. You have to make it a standard form first before you can do that. So 3x squared plus x minus 1 will give you a mark because you have made an equation that was not in standard form to be in standard form. So what you have to do when you get here, as we all know, that our A is 3, our B is 1, and then our C is negative 1. So what you do here, you just use the quadratic formula. over 2a, yeah, and then you just substitute your values. And then here we punch it into the calculator, and then after that we will get our answers as 0,43 or x equals to 0,77 and negative 0,77, and then after that you are done. Then sometimes they can give you fractions. Maybe they'll just say maybe x, maybe they'll say plus 2 over x, and then it can be maybe something like plus 2 over x maybe, and then maybe equals to positive 6, something like this. And then maybe they say correct to, maybe they say 2 decimal places. So if they say correct to 2 decimal places, remember that we are given an equation that is not in standard form. So we have to make sure that we put the equation into a standard form before we can continue with the questions. So the first thing that we'll do here, every time if you say a denominator, take that denominator and multiply every term that you have. So our denominator was x, so I'll multiply every term that I have in the equation by x. Remember, what you do on the left, you also do it on the right. So that is why I'm saying multiply every term by x. So here, x divided by x, cancel each other because it's 1. And then plus 2, and then equals to 6x. You see, we still do not have a standard form. Our standard form must have descending exponents, and then equals to 0. Now we can be able to identify our a as 1, our b as negative 6, and our c as 2. Then what do we do after identifying those? We can just put it into the standard form. We can just put it into the quadratic formula, which will be something like x equals to negative b plus minus root of b squared minus 4a c over 2a, and then we substitute, and then we find our answers. So how many things have we learned today? We have learned that if we have this type of an equation, we just equate everything to 0. But if we have this one, we have to multiply the brackets in because it is equals to a number. This is also the same if you have 2 brackets like this, multiplying one another and equals to 0. Even here, what do? You just equate each bracket to 0 and then you find the answer. But now if you have the one like this, the product of 2 brackets equated to a number here. So what do you do if you have something like this? You multiply in the brackets. So these were the examples that we did about that. Here we just equated each bracket to 0, then we solved and found the answers. But this side we had to multiply in. Why we had to multiply in here? Because it was equals to a number. Then this one is an example that we did about it together. And then after that we have learned also about the standard form. Let me just write this one nicely. So we have also learned about the standard form. So if you have a standard form, you have to make sure that all equations are a standard form before you can start factorizing like this. So it is very good for you to know how does your standard form must look like. So like here we had 3 terms, we have this trinomial here, but we have seen that 2 is a common factor in all of them. So what did we do there? We divided by 2 everywhere, then we had a correct standard form that will be given marks, and then we get the factors. Avoid, guys, using the quadratic formula here if you have factors. Make sure that you pull the factors nicely and then you get your answers, because most of the time when they are marking, they are looking for the factors, they're not the quadratic formula. When to use a quadratic formula, they will always give you a hint. If they say round off or correct to 2 decimal places, it's a clear indication that you have to make sure that your equation is a standard form. You substitute and then you get your 2 answers there. Then what also we have learned is that if you have a fraction, you take the denominator, and then what do you do with it? You multiply every time. Take denominator and multiply every time. And multiply every time. Okay guys, I'll see you in another video where I'll be explaining about the inequalities and also the set equations. Bye.